Good evening, good evening, good evening. Kick off here in a moment. Hoping you can hear me. Can you hear me? All right, you know me, I like to get rocking. All righty, let's see here. Okay, cool. Oh. Sorry for that. Just wanted to make sure with my headset on that you can hear me. And if you can't, just type "can't hear you." What's wrong with you? But I listen back myself so I can make sure I can hear myself. Anyway, let's get cracking. It's 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. You know me. I'm not coming and waiting for people to come in the room and all this kind of thing. You'll get here when you get here. You'll stay as long as you stay, and you'll leave when you leave. Is kind of how I see it. But once we post it, it'll be on my page, and so you'll have access to it. I want to talk about tonight marriage, right? And the reality of the fact that people who have long-standing marriages are wonderful in the sense of the length. That's a wonderful thing. You know, if my parents have been married over 50 and a half years. It'll be 51 years in August. So, they're over halfway to year 51. They have a lot of friends who have been married for 50, 60 years. Some who are, of course, widows now, who were together for decades. And I'm not even going that long, just 20 years. I had a conversation earlier today with someone who was married for 26 years. 26 years. And the marriage ended. And so I was like, oh, you know, is your husband deceased? And they were like, no. 26 years. 26 years. So let's do a little math to set this right, okay? If we just go with the typical, let's say 18, right? You graduate from high school, average. And let's say you live, and now people love to take this from the Bible, but 70, which is 70 years. Now, you know, some people live way past 70. Some people don't ever make it to 70. But let's say you live basically 52 years from the time you're deemed an adult at 18 till you take your rest, right? That's 52 years. 52. So if you're married 20 years, let's say you get married at 18. Hey, bless your heart. I got married at 19. I have nothing I can say. So you get married at 18. You are married for 20 years. You part ways at 38. Something happens. You're no longer married. That's 20 years. Now, technically, that person at 38 years of age could get married again. And let's say they get married at 40 and stay married until 70. Well, they put in a considerable number of years, right? But that's not typically how this goes. It's not typically how it goes. Usually if you hit 20 years, at least once upon a time, you're kind of at that point like, well, we together, we might as well stay together. But here's the reason why I chose, and I don't always do this, but let me tell you why I picked this. One, because my parents have been together for a long time. I'm 47. They've been married 50. So they've been together a long time. And I'm not going to talk about them tonight, but obviously I was around for some of those years. And the fact is, it wasn't always wedded bliss. And I'm not suggesting that it's just absolutely, they're just showering each other with great love now. I mean, they've been together. I suspect I can say they love each other. But the fact is, for every one relationship I've seen where people have been together 20 plus, right? and they seem to be very just doting on each other. I have seen more than my share of where they've been together 20 plus and not so much. I shared this account last week, if I remember correctly, and it fits perfectly tonight, of a couple who was together until the wife passed away. The gentleman was a school counselor, and I'll leave it like that because obviously I have people who went to school with me on my Facebook page, but he was a school counselor, and if I said his name, I got several hundred people on my page who would know exactly who he is, so I'm not going to say his name, but was a school counselor. At what level I won't talk about. He was married to his wife till her passing. They had 2 children, a girl and a boy. They were together a long time. As a matter of fact, I think they put in 60. I think, don't quote me on that. She passed away several years ago now, about 5 years ago maybe. So they were together maybe 60 years. 60. But if you didn't catch my last week's broadcast, my second wife at that time and I were at Denny's in the area in Merced, California, and we were having breakfast, and they came in. Now, we were sitting way towards the back end of the Denny's, and they were way towards the front, almost to the front, and didn't quite see us. It wasn't full, but they just didn't see us, which is fine. I'm a people watcher, and I'm a psychology major. Anyway. So they came in, I recognized them immediately because these were my bosses. I used to work for them. And so they came in, sat down, ordered their breakfast, and I watched them from the time they walked in till the time they left. Now, I got there before, or we got there before they did. I kid you not. Now, this was 20 years ago, easy. They did not talk to each other. They did not talk to each other at all the whole time. I kid you not. And I'm not laughing because it's like funny. I'm laughing because it really actually shook me. It shook me to watch them. This was early 2000, right? I watched them the whole time. And, you know, with the exception of talking to my own wife and eating and stuff at the time, I would look up and literally they were either looking at the menu, and when they got their food, they just ate their food. There was, I don't even know if they even looked at each other, even once, and then paid and left. Now, obviously, well, okay, that's just one incident. No, I worked for them for 2 years. I worked for them. And I had conversations with them. And their marriage, because you're working in the same business, you own the business, would come up. And I can assure you, in particular, the wife was not, she didn't talk joyously. Is that a good way to say that? She didn't talk happily. She didn't talk like a woman who was in a very loving, doting, caring relationship. She just didn't. And then to see them several years after I was gone from the business is closed up. I was working in an office at the time. I left the business. And to see them years later, sitting there eating together, they're together, still together, but just simply not even talking to each other. Now, that's one specific incident, but obviously, having been in ministry more than half my life, I have seen many, many, many couples like this. Many. And I'm not blaming religion. Before somebody goes there, just stay with me, let me talk. Chime in, post a comment, but stay with me. Now, they obviously came along in an era, he's got to be, I think he's still alive, and he's got to be at least 80 now. So they came along in an era where, from a religious standpoint, if you divorce, God hates divorce, the whole heavens will collapse, on and on and on and on. Even though divorce has always been. And let me just say this. Divorce has always been. For those of you who think divorce is some relatively new thing in the last 30 years, no. Divorce, it goes all the way back even to Bible times. It's not new. Divorce is not new. It was actually quite common even in the Bible times. I won't get into that because not everybody's a Christian. But trust me, divorce ain't new. It is publicized differently like everything else. And let me say another thing here. If you live now, which of course you do because you'd be dead, obviously, and so you wouldn't be able to hear me, the reality of it is everything is amasticized because of social media and internet. But chill with crime is on a rampage. No, crime has been. But now you have social media and you have internet that allows you to get in there. You have a lot of self-anointed reporters who take out their cell phone. And of course, we know the George Floyd situation. A 17-year-old young lady was sitting there recording that. 17. If she was a reporter, she would have got a Pulitzer, whatever they call a Pulitzer, right? So the reality of it is the reason why it seems so pervasive is because we see the reporting of it. We see the recordings of it. You can go on reality TV website or reality websites and see people posting what is said to be real life situations, fights, arguments, murder, you name it. And so the reason why it's just, woo, in your face is because we have so much access to it in a way we didn't when I was a kid. And as a friend of mine and I were joking, you had to have a beeper. And of course, I wasn't allowed a beeper until I was grown, So you're talking about a beeper and you have to beep the person and they have to go to a phone and call you from a pay phone or from, a house phone or whatever the case may be. Now, of course, you pull out your phone and you can call and Wi-Fi call and FaceTime and on and on and on and on and on. Anyway, so let's not be hyperbolic here and act like what we're seeing in terms of divorce, where the divorce rate is the highest it's been in, let's also keep in mind they weren't necessarily tracking some of this stuff. The sophisticated ability to track some of these numbers supersedes. Plus, you also got to account for population growth. So yes, divorce is through the roof, but so is population growth. So you gotta balance these things out. Anyway, I want to get into all that statistical conversation. My point is really to talk about the fact that, and Gabe, how could you make this about singles? Well, I'm clever like that. My concern is that as a person who's single, been single now for a little while, more than a little while now, is I've noticed the glorification, which is what I say. There's a glorification that we often give to people who have been married for decades, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever years, right? There's an immediate glorification that we give, and we assess, and I mean we who are single, we assess that if they've been together 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years and on, that clearly it has to be a great relationship. It has to be. There's no way they could stay together that long and not have worked through, some of the petty stuff, you're right. You see what I'm saying? And they're good now, right? They've hit some nirvana. They've hit some major moment when they realize we love each other, right? Yeah. And we've been together how long? Oh man, 20 years, 30 years. Oh, well, we should just be okay. You right. Let's just be okay. I don't know about you, but I haven't come across that couple. And maybe they are out there, but I haven't come across them. I've come across, and it's going, me, got to get a little deep here. I've come across something like this. We had some old co-workers. My mom and I worked for the same company many years ago, over 20 years ago, getting old. And at that time, we had a lady who was our manager, our supervisor for case managers. And she told my mother, she knew my mother, as friends. I was just an employee. But she told my mother about her mom and dad, that her more than likely passed on now, but her mom and dad had reached a point of going to the nursing home. And it had just come to the point they couldn't take care of him anymore. And so it was time to go to the nursing home. And so she was working to get them in the same room. And her mother said no. And so, of course, she said, Mom, why not? Because, I'm sorry, her mom basically said, because I did my tour of duty and I'm done. I kid you not. I did my tour of duty in dealing with your dad and I'm done. I don't want to live out the remainder. Obviously, you go to the nursing home. Typically, you're not going to the nursing home to eventually leave it and go live a healthy, long life. No. Typically, if you're a senior citizen, when you go in the nursing home, yeah, you may leave to visit and all that, but you're living there for the fact that you can't take care of yourself, and it's a struggle for others to take care of you. So, she kind of pretty much knew, I'm not leaving here. So since this is going to be my last roundup, I don't want to be in a room with him. Now, I got a lot of other ones I can give you, but Gabe, that's just a small sample. You're right. But I have the luxury of having been in and around religion my entire life. And because I have been around it my entire life, that means I've seen couples who would, if they were still alive now, be in their hundreds. I've seen older couples. I've seen, of course, situations where the woman goes to the place of worship and the man doesn't go. And I've been privy to conversations when my father, who was my pastor growing up, is talking to that gentleman. When he gets an opportunity to talk to him, he asks, so, why don't you go? And he says, hey, man, you hear things like this. It's the only time I get when I don't have to be around her. That's her thing. I'm just telling you what I'm telling you. I'm sitting here listening to this stuff. Now, again, wonderful couples. There are obviously some couples been together a long time. You watch them, you just almost weep at how much they dote on each other, how much they care for each other. It's just wonderful. It's awesome. Hey, I'm not here to disparage anything like that. That's beautiful. But let's be honest. If we're honest with ourselves, we've all seen that couple, maybe more than one. How about this situation? You go to a family reunion, or you go to a family outing, a wedding, or funeral. Funerals are really bad for this. So you go to the repast, and you're sitting there, and people are walking up. Oh, I kind of use Miss Jenkins, so hopefully nobody's a Jenkins. Oh, Miss Jenkins, so glad to see you here. And yeah, we hate to get together just for funerals. Yeah, baby, we hate to see that happen, right? So you get together at the repast, and Miss Jenkins and Mr. Jenkins are sitting there. So you walk up and you pay your respects, and glad to have you guys here. How long you guys been together? And they kind of look at each other. Oh, it's been about 70 years. Oh, 70 years? Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. 70 years. Oh, that's so awesome. And Miss Jenkins, Miss Jenkins doesn't say that. Miss Jenkins says, well, it is. And you go, excuse me, ma'am? She says, well, we're together. And he don't miss a beat. Yeah, well, I can't be anywhere else. They won't take me. Now, everybody laughs who hears the comments because they think they're just being funny. They think they're just being funny. But I'm a people watcher. So I don't assume anything. I'm looking at them right in their face. And because I'm a drummer and the drums usually faces the audience, I have learned to, while people are watching me, to watch them. And because I know how to move my head in a way where you can't tell I'm looking you right in your face, I have watched these couples. I have watched the Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins. And when they make those little comments, and you can just see the furiousness on their face, and you realize very, very subtly they're not actually joking. When you realize that Mrs. Jenkins ain't happy, but she's just been there for 40, 50, 60 years. And of course, because I'm actually in ministry, I've had conversations with the likes of Miss Jenkins, Mrs. Jenkins. I've had conversations with the likes of whoever. As a matter of fact, as recently as 2 weeks ago. And since some of the members where I am an associate pastor are on my Facebook page, I won't mention any names. But after I taught a couple of Wednesdays ago, one such person who has been in their marriage, I think anywhere from 40 to 50 years, came up to me and unsolicited, I don't ask this stuff of people, I'm one of her pastors, she shared with me briefly her concerns and some of the non-bliss of the relationship. They've been together anywhere between 40 and 50 years. I think it's close to 50. And there was genuine concern on her face about where things are going. Where things are and where they're going. Almost 50 years. Almost 50. So I wanted to do this broadcast because I don't like us living in the clouds. I don't like to live in the clouds, and I don't like us to live in the clouds. Now there are many people who would look at that and just go, oh, that is so wonderful. Oh, that is so wonderful. Because they're still together, because they're together. And what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. And many of those couples, now I'm going to get kind of serious here, stay with me. Many of those couples stay together out of the fear of what they thought God would say, when in real fact it wasn't God, it was the religion. It's the religion that they have been a part of that they fear the most. They fear their pastor. They fear the deacons. They fear the prying eyes. They called it God, but not really God. As I've said on more than one occasion, no one in recorded history has ever been condemned to hell because of divorce. Let me say that again, just in case somebody's listening who doesn't really understand that. No one, biblically speaking, has ever been condemned to hell because of divorce. No one. Anywhere in all of Scripture. God hates divorce. By the way, that particular scripture you're referring to doesn't actually say that. I dare you go type in Google search, God hates divorce. And it doesn't say that. In the King James, New King James, CSB, NASB, ESV, NIV, it doesn't say God hates divorce. It doesn't actually say that. That's something somebody who's in my position said over the pulpit, and it picked up and took off like wildfire. And people have been saying it for decades and decades and decades. And very few people are willing to stop and go, let me see where that actually says that. Well, what God put together. Notice what, not who. What? What God put together, not who. So these couples have been together for decades. Now let me show you how bad this gets. Because Gabe, so far you're not really saying that, oh, I'm just setting you up. It's setting you up. Unfortunately, if most of us are willing to be honest, we know for a fact that in some of these relationships, there was physical, mental, emotional abuse. I'm just going to let this sink in now. Why don't I glorify just on the basis that somebody's been married for decades? Because obviously I know from having to give counsel and help try to answer some of the tough questions like whether or not a person should stay or go, is because they report to me as their pastor or a spiritual leader that they're being abused. I know right now someone, as far as I know, still married, who was literally raped by her own husband. Again, not calling anybody's names, because I know people who know these people, so I'm not calling anybody, and I wouldn't call any name anyway, not in these circumstances. And when she shared it with me some years ago, it was such a fresh situation. And I'm not going to get into any details just in case somebody else might actually know what happened. She may have shared with him. But she was raped. He said, how can you be raped by your own husband? See, and that question right there is the reason why not only was it able to happen, but why she stayed. She went on to tell me, when I was, of course, on the phone with her. They live in California, I live here. And when she told me, I was appalled. I was absolutely appalled and said, what are you doing? Get out of there. And she went on to admit that it had happened before on more than one occasion. But then she said something to me that I had heard many times before. And when I heard it, I was angry, I was frustrated, but I understood. Well, if this is my cross to bear, if this is what God wants me to endure, then I guess I have to endure it. And I was so floored by that. And she had resolved herself to it, because the alternative was to deal with being a failure. The alternative was to deal with the fact that even though she had every grounds, because not only did he forcibly take from her what she should have been allowed to give to him, especially as his wife. One incident, she was on the phone talking to a friend, laying in bed, having a great conversation with a friend, and he came in playing with her, and went from playing with her to just going on with his business. And I said, what in the world? She said, I was just there. I was just there. He went on and took what he wanted to take and went on about his business. So while she was on the phone, and I don't give her what you say, that's rape. Period. And she had actually people on her job tell her, you need to report this. And of course, because of religion, don't blame God for this. Don't blame God for this. Because of religion, and I knew the place where she grew up, that's how long I've known her, over 30 years. Because of religion, she stayed. Her pastor and wife, I know, because I know, this is all you need to know, there were, in their marriage, early on in their marriage, there was infidelity. And the wife stayed. And matter of fact, what the wife chose to do, since she couldn't leave because religion didn't allow her to leave, she went on and did her thing to even the score. Oh, you don't think this stuff happens in these long marriages? I've been told of things like, well, if you're going to do that, you got to buy me a bigger ring. If you're going to do that, I want a bigger house. If you're going to do this, that, and the other, I want a better car. If I've got to stay with you, though you're abusing me and mistreating me, then so we can keep up this facade, let's call it what it really is, so we can maintain this facade, well then I need some furniture. And I've had conversations with grandmas and great grandmas who are most of them have passed away now, who were married up until till death did them part. Who, if you ask them, some of those who are widows right now, and if you ask them, those who stayed for decades, so tell me about your marriage, you might not get a response, or you might get a response you'd rather not hear. You might be told some things that you don't want to know about Mr. Jenkins, about Mrs. Jenkins. You might come to find out that things were not as blissful as your eyes thought them to be. You might, as your ears led you to believe you were hearing. No, they learned over the years how to put on a facade. They learned over the years how to present themselves to the public. Not just at the place we call church. No, when they went to the funerals, when they went to the weddings, when they went to the family reunions, they put on a facade. No, they just took the vow serious. No, there was abuses, there was mistreatment, there was infidelity. But they were convinced, because they got married young in most cases. If you're going to be together 50 years, you're not getting married at 30. Unless somehow you're blessed to live to be, 90 or whatever. You're typically not getting married late in life. So if you're together 50 and 60 years, my parents were 20 and 19 respectfully. So when you get married that young, and there is immaturity, and maybe abuses and mistreatment that comes along with it, and you're born in a certain era where you're told you just suck it up. Well, if I cook better, if I clean better, if I lay with him more, whenever he wants me to, if I do whatever she wants me to do, if I buy her whatever she wants me to buy, if I go wherever he or she wants me to go, if I act the whatever way, if I dress whatever way they want me to dress. In those kind of relationships, jealousy runs rampant. In those kinds of relationships, you actually have people competing with each other. In those kind of relationships, there's all kind of toxicity. But they're still together. And while we're clapping and we're praising them because they've made their 60th anniversary, and we're clapping and we're praising them because they've made their 70th anniversary, and we're just all in awe of them, especially as people who are single, and we're just sitting there going, oh, I wish that were me. And I've told many people this, especially women. Yeah, women, I'm talking to you, because you are the ones who more often than not are going to glamorize those years. More often than not, if you don't open up your eyes, you're going to be the first ones to say, well, see, I just am so unlucky because I didn't have that long relationship like Mrs. Jenkins. God, what's wrong with me? Why couldn't I be married for 50 years like Miss Jenkins? And you have never talked to Miss Jenkins. You have never asked her what she was up against. And even when you asked her a question, you just assumed the marriage was fine. And maybe they're very private people, so they don't share those things. But somebody who knows them and knows them best will tell you, actually, no, it wasn't really like that. I got another acquaintance from California. We both live in the South now. She lives in Texas, I live here. Recently, her father, and I'll just say it just like that, passed away. And some things came to light that she chose to share with me. I call her an acquaintance because I don't know her. I knew her father because he was in ministry, her stepfather technically. And she shared with me some things that she suffered while there in her parents' home. And the fact is, life was on one hand blissful in terms of the things that they acquired. Had just bought a new home, some other things, wonderful. I hope you catch where I'm going with this, because I'm going to turn this corner real hard. They learn how to put on a face. They learn how to present to the world that all was well. They learn how to make it work. They learn how to make it look good. But I'm sitting there listening to her and the things she went through behind her mother, and I'm thinking he couldn't have possibly considered that a great marriage if his daughter or stepdaughter was suffering behind his wife. Now, granted, he wasn't the biological father, but the reality of it is he had to be suffering. I was a stepdad at some point in my life. And I saw the things, the dynamics of the things that went on, particularly in my second marriage. So you have to understand here what happens when we do that to people. What do you mean what we do to people? I'm not doing anything. I'm just saying they've been together a long. No, come on. Somebody be honest. When you see it, and you as soon as you hear, oh, they've been together 20, 30, 40 years, or you see it on Facebook, and I'm celebrating my so-and-so anniversary. Here's one that you catch on social media. So the wife, like you know the wife and the husband, right? So the wife posts pictures and all this kind of stuff. Well, Gabe, he's not really for social media. But you don't see nothing from him? Nothing? Okay, he don't have a Facebook page, but you know him personally. So when you say, hey, your wife just posted you guys are celebrating your 50th anniversary. And his response is like, your point being, okay, something don't go off in your head? I'm not telling you to get in their business. I'm saying something don't click in your mind. Something don't cause you to go, 50 years and that's the best he could do? Something ain't right. Maybe I shouldn't be applauding the 50 years. Maybe that's 50 years of suffering. Maybe that's 50 years of pain. Maybe that's 50 years of tolerance. Maybe that's 50 years of contention. Maybe that's 50 years of competition, one against the other. You never see them together. And when they're together, they're apart. I've seen couples who were married for decades don't even walk near each other. Act like they don't want to have nothing to do with each other. They seem to be more interested in the time they spend separated than they do together. I know some of you have heard this. They don't even sleep in the same bedroom anymore. They live like roommates. They don't live like husband and wife. They live like roommates. See, look, Gabe, well, why are you talking about this? First of all, because I don't have just singles on my page. I have married people on my page. And I'm not dumb. I was married. And I know married people, y'all probably not going to respond because you're afraid somebody going to start wondering why you're responding and get all in your business. People want single people to be transparent, right? They want us as singles to tell all their business. But when it comes to married couples, y'all who don't tell your business, what your wife gonna think, what your husband gonna think. Oh, you don't supposed to share nothing. Which is why, again, it can become a prison. And I'm sorry, fellas, it can become a prison for us, but a lot of times it becomes a prison for our wives. It becomes a prison for your wife. Especially, with all due respect, if you got some of them male chauvinistic, antiquated attitudes and ideas. Here, let's turn the corner. I'm actually telling you I'm going to turn the corner. I usually just do it. Here's what I've learned. And this is going to be especially true for a couple like this. When you get married, especially if you're in your late teens, 20s, maybe even 30s, a lot of times what you find is a woman wants a quality relationship. When she talks about marriage, she's talking about a quality relationship. That's really kind of what she's thinking about. Yeah, she wants the quality of life, but she's talking about the quality of life as relative to the relationship. Which is why women, especially in their, again, 20s, maybe peeking up into the 30s, are willing to endure less the quality of life if she thinks she's got love. And I don't know why that song crossed my mind. Now that we found love, what are we gonna do with it? Anyway, sorry. So for the woman, fellas, she's looking for quality of relationship. For the men, ladies, he's looking for quality of life, as to say, what does life look like? And how hard am I going to have to work to have the life I want to have, or for us to have the life we want to have? That's kind of the two different. So no, gay, because now, what I've seen over the last 6 years in my conversations is women who, of course, may have been married at some point, really didn't intend on being single, and maybe because of widowhood or because of divorce is now single, maybe had to raise a child or two. And so she had to now begin to deal with the quality of life. Her husband is gone, or her fiance, or her, whatever. I usually say husband, but you get the point. The long-term mate is gone. And the one who was providing some of that quality of life to some extent is gone, especially through divorce or through a breakup. So now the one who was a part of contributing to the quality of life, maybe you bought a house together, maybe you were able to maintain some high-end kind of cars, maybe you were trying to build some finance, and the relationship ends. No matter whose fault it is, the relationship ends, right? And so all of a sudden now, this woman is left with potentially not only trying to build the quality, trying to maintain the quality of her life as whatever it was, but if she's got children, she's got to try to maintain the quality of life for her and her children. So let's say you get married at 20. Let's say you stay together and you're 40. Not old by any stretch of the imagination. You're not due to retire technically until 65. And depending on what your situation was, 70, 75. What if she was a stay-home mother? And yeah, her kids may be pretty close to being grown, if not grown, unless they had kids later in the marriage. So she goes from 20 to 40. Her kids are nearly grown, if not grown, but she has had to deal with the quality of life. How about, no, let's go 20 to 35. So the kids are not grown. Let's say she had a child the first year she was married, so by 21 and 22. So she's got two kids who are now, what would be 15, 14, 13, somewhere 13, 14 respectively. So she's got at least another 3 to 4 years before those kids are grown. Her marriage is gone, and she's got to figure out how to recover emotionally, because she got married with the intent to have the quality relationship. And she was willing to endure the lack of quality of life, hoping that it would build together over time. Now she's 35. She's got two kids. I know so many women who have either been here or are here now. And so she's got two kids, teenage, which means she's got to deal with high school costs. And unlike elementary school and middle school, high school costs are off the chain. And we all know it. We all know it. Graduation rings and yearbooks and senior pictures and blah, blah, blah. She's got dances that are going to cost way more than an elementary school or middle school dance. Mom, I want to go to prom, which could be hundreds of dollars, dresses and tuxedos and on and on and on and on and on. And having married two women who had children, I know from personal experience, I watched when I married them. Now, I didn't understand what I'm saying right now. Back when I got married for the first time to a woman with children, I didn't understand. I was in my 20s. I didn't understand this. Trust me, this is what I've learned. I've learned this. I didn't know this. I didn't know that I was engaging individuals who were now concerned with the quality of life because they had to be. I didn't know I was dealing with individuals who at once upon a time in previous relationships were dealing with quality of relationship, and when the relationships broke down, now they had to be responsible for all of it. Quality of life with the hopes to maybe one day have a quality relationship. And now I'm going to spill the beans, ladies. I'm going to spill the beans. But what I discover, of course, in hindsight 2020, is when a woman has to shift her gears and think solely about quality of life, something that she was raised to believe that at the very least a man would at least help her with, if not to some extent take care of. Now she's faced with it, and not just for herself, but for her children. And that's not going to just end when they turn 18. That's not going to just be over at 18. If they go to college, you're talking 22. If they get into a bad relationship and the relationship falls apart, you might be talking even to their 30s. And so she is in her 40s. She is in her 50s. And she's still trying to work just to maintain the quality of her life, as well as to try to keep up the quality of life for her children, who now continue to come to her well into their 20s because they're used to mom keeping up the quality of their life. And if they're daughters, they don't turn to dad, they turn to mom to try to maintain the quality of their life. They may even move back in with mom at 2 and 3 different iterations of time. Sons as well. Why? Because when their life dips below a certain level of quality, then mom's like, come on home, son. You don't have to be out there struggling. Come on home. Come on home, daughter or mom. Can I come home? Why? Because the quality of life has dropped. I tried to get into a relationship. The quality of the relationship didn't work. It wasn't there. In part because, let's be honest, I'll say it, maybe they can't, because they just didn't see a quality relationship. I'm not blaming anybody, but they didn't see a quality relationship growing up. They didn't see a long-standing couple with 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years in it. And not only were they married 40 and 50 years, but they were blissfully married. In other words, when they struggled as a couple, as Tamala Mann and her husband said, we us against the world. They didn't see grandma and grandpa struggle them against the world. No, they subtly saw grandma and grandpa fighting each other, and everybody tried to keep it silent. Nobody wanted anybody to talk about it. Yeah, grandma and grandpa stayed together for 50 years, but what they heard was arguments. What they saw was bitterness. What they saw was frustration. They saw fights. And then they saw it happen with their mom and happen with their dad. And then they went and picked a boyfriend, and they picked a girlfriend, and they perpetuated it into their generation. No, this ain't no generational curse. This is called nature. This is called nurture. This is called watching people and learning their habits. This is what this is called, which is why I don't glorify the 50-year marriage. No, tell me what kind of quality do you have? What's the quality of the relationship? Don't tell me about the quality of life, because I know a lot of couples, come on, talk to me, who end up getting divorced after 20 and 30 and 40 years, and everybody was shocked but me. I wasn't shocked. Why? Because I knew that if you could get divorced after 20 and 30 and 40 years, and you bought a house, and you went on trips, and you had cars, and you went to every place you wanted to go, and you had fine dining, and you still divorced, that's because the relationship was not quality. You might have had quality life, but you didn't have a quality relationship. Fellas, do you actually think women who are in a quality relationship actually want to get divorced? See, I'm prepared to cut women a break. No disrespect, fellas, but I'm prepared to cut women a break. Because more often than not, fellas, we are so much more concerned about quality of life. Watch this. I gave this example earlier. See if you can track with me. Hey, honey. Yeah, babe. You know, we haven't gone out on a date in a long time. What you mean? Yeah, we don't, when we first got together, man, it was so much fun. Well, we got the kids. Well, yeah, I mean, but the kids are teenage now, and the oldest can watch the other ones. Well, I got to get them to go to work. When do you want to do it? Well, I mean, if you don't want to do it, no, you brought it up. Somebody talk to me. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that's not a common conversation. Honey, you know what? We should just take a trip this weekend. And I was really looking into it. And they got this nice place that's not too... I know you don't like to be on the road a long time. And I already did all the research and all of this. And, we could just get away for a couple of days. You know what? The kids are grown. We've been together for 30 years. And I'm not... Well, the anniversary is going to be in 3 months. No. I'm not talking about the anniversary. I mean, we just need to get away. We just need to spend time together. Well, I got to work this weekend. You should have asked me. Well, I just wanted it to be a surprise. And I'm not saying this doesn't happen on the other side. I'm not saying that there are not men who go through this. Because, again, and I'm not blaming the man, but understand, you have women who are talking, and I don't take this as a disrespect, but I'm going to just be candid with you, because I see so many women talking about being bosses, so many women talking about making their own, and you know me, I applaud you ladies, do your thing. I understand to some extent why you talk like that, because you feel like, if I've got to provide myself quality of life, then I'm going to do it like the dude. I'm going to boss up. I'm going to get mine. I'm going to hustle. You got more women talking about hustling now than ever before. I'm on my hustle. I'm on my grind, working 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, having to apologize to their children. Hey, I'm sorry, but you guys want them Nikes. And don't even realize now you're perpetuating on to your children the desire for a quality of life instead of the quality relationship. And I don't blame you ladies exclusively. I think you have to own some of it. I think you got to own some of it. But again, where is that father? Where's that father? It's very important to me that my son right now is in his room. And while the quality of life may not be exactly what I would want it to be, not what I would hope it to be, but my interaction with him and my time with him is important to me in this sense. Not taking trips and doing all that. We gonna go to California and do all this kind of thing here soon, but that's not really it. Not going to theme parks and spending up a bunch of money and then sending him back to his mom and convincing him that that's what the quality of a relationship is. No. I refuse to perpetuate that kind of myth that it's only a quality relationship if it's a quality of life relationship. The only way we can have a quality relationship is if we got stuff and if we're able to go do stuff. That's the only way it can be a quality relationship. That's not true. It's not true even a little bit. And unfortunately, ladies, because in part we forced you to, going back to the baby boomers, we forced you to. We forced you to have to start dealing with now watch this, even the women who stayed in the marriages. The man would come home, lose his job, and just felt like the world is against me, so I'm going to sit on the couch for the next 10 years. Why I got to go to work? I'm not talking about pandemic. Don't tell me about all this, well, the extra 300, don't give me that nonsense. Talk to some people who's on unemployment and ask them how grand their life is before you start running your mouth about the extra money on unemployment. I just encourage you to have a conversation before you start passing judgment. Anyway, I'm talking about people who just come to a point, they just quit on life, they got a spouse, man or woman, and now she's got to carry the load, he's got to carry the load to try to maintain the quality of life. And this is why people, I could do a whole subject on this, but I believe this is why people can do better single with their finances than they do married, because one of the things that happens to us when we get married is the assumption of quality of life. That quality of life speaks to quality of relationship. So in other words, the cars I'm driving, the house I live in, the places I dine in, the food I eat, the clothes I wear. So if the quality of our life as a couple is low, then we're going to go out here and kill ourselves on our jobs, because with 2 incomes, we should be able to live this kind of quality of life. We should be able to buy a house. We should be able to drive a high-end car. We should. And the pressure mounts. And nobody talks about things like management, budget. I could do a whole topic on that. But the reality of it is, because people are married and they start assuming that the other party is going to carry the load, maybe not in terms of bringing home the money, but in terms of not overspending, so I can go ahead and get the extra purse. I can go ahead and pay for the golf game. I can go ahead and take the trip to Cancun with my girls. I can go ahead and go out to the clubs with my fellas. Blah, blah, blah. Back and forth. Back and forth, and then I hit the midlife crisis, and I gotta go get me a red Corvette. Well, you gonna get you a Corvette? Well, then I gotta go get me a da 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 da. And we gotta have the latest iPhones and the latest Androids and the latest tablets, and we gotta have all the latest this, that, and the other. And because we're married, and because we have 2 incomes and 3 incomes, because we're so much more concerned about quality of life, or we gonna stay together. We're going to be together 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. I know a couple right now. Again, I'm not calling any names. They're not technically on Facebook, at least not on my page. But again, people trust me. They told me they lost their home. They lost their home trying to keep up with, as it were, the Joneses. Trying to maintain the quality of life. And in particular, my coworker at that time, she told me that she was actually trying to run around with the church. With the church she was going to. And they ended up losing their home trying to go to all the conferences and do all of those things. She let the religion they were in bankrupt them, and he didn't speak up, so they lost their home. They lost the home that they raised their children in. They're still together. Now, this is a pretty loving couple, but that's just one piece of the pie. That's one small example of the bigger picture that I'm talking about. Just because people are together for decades, and I know they're well into 50 plus years of marriage. They're in their 70s. They've been married well over 50 plus years. Their oldest child is 54, maybe. I think something like that. So you understand, ladies and gentlemen, just because these couples not only stay together for lengths of time, get my point, and even seem to have the quality of life, it doesn't mean that they have a quality relationship. So they may have the years, the longevity, and they may even have the quality of life. As we who are single, looking through the darkened window, might suggest they have. But unless we actually get into conversation, unless we actually get to know them, unless we can look past the veil and really see what there is to be seen, we need to stop all this glorification just because they've been married a long time. If I could get at least one person to realize longevity doesn't mean marital bliss, doesn't mean wedded bliss, doesn't mean they're happy. It doesn't automatically mean that every year, every decade they've gone higher and higher in love. If I can just get one person to realize that it is not automatic just being together for a long time. Now, I'm not sitting here advocating that people get divorced. But if you so happen to be in one of those relationships where you are drowning, what's that song? Keeping your head above water. And it ain't got nothing to do with temporary layoffs. It ain't got nothing to do with quality of life. It has something to do with the poor quality of relationship. It has something to do with no matter how many decades you've been together. If you're honest with yourself, you have literally been fighting against yourself trying to stay in the marriage. I'm not here to tell you to divorce. I'm not here to tell you to stay together. I would recommend you get marital counseling. At the very least, get marital counseling. The least you could do, get marital counseling and find out why your marriage after decades and decades is miserable. Do you know what it is? Can you imagine what it is to be married for decades and decades and you're living together through divorces, other people's divorces of your friends, people you used to hang out with, y'all used to go out to dinner with, and then you find out your bestie is getting a divorce. You found out your road dog is getting a divorce. And you know that your marriage has really been on the rocks since the first few years, but you're still together. And now you come together and you both know the couple. Hey, did you hear about, Mr. and Mrs., our good friends, Sambo and Janbo? Yeah. So what you think? What you mean? Because you know you don't want to talk about it. Because you know that eventually, when you begin to examine some of the reasons why they are now parting, you know some of that's true in your relationship. Let me talk to married couples directly and I'm done. Listen to me. Don't avoid the conversation. Don't avoid it. Stop avoiding the conversations. Have the tough conversation. Why are you in a marriage that's loveless? Why are you engaging in situations where even sex is a chore? Well, it's Thursday. What that mean? Oh, it's Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday. That's tragic. That's absolutely tragic. That's heartbreaking. You've been together 30 years and basically, okay, Thursdays at about 8:30. We're going to have dinner about 6. We're going to sit down and act like we're watching a movie. And he's going to get fresh with me. I know people don't say that word anymore. And then we're going to go into the room. And we're going to go about 20, 30 minutes. Maybe. It depends on if he's tired. Might get 10 minutes in. Then he going to go to sleep. Well, what do you do after that? Oh, I usually get up and wash some clothes. I go do some dishes. I go watch my show. I binge watch Hula. I'm not trying to be funny, ladies and gentlemen. These are people's marriages, and I'm not stupid. I got plenty of couples on my Facebook page, and if y'all willing to be honest, at least with yourselves, you ain't got to type no comment, be honest with yourself. You're living in that kind of situation. Be honest with yourself. You are living in that kind of situation. And I have to ask you, rhetorically of course, what on God's green earth are you doing? Why, oh why are you subjecting yourself to that? Oh, I know everybody sings your praises because you're gonna post as regular on your anniversary date. Okay, we've been together for 30 years. I literally know couples right now. A couple of them are connected to me. Yeah, a couple of them are connected to me on Facebook. And again, I'm not going to name any names. But I know for a fact, and they don't know I know, I ain't stupid. I've watched their behavior. I've had enough conversation with one or more of the parties in these relationships to know they're miserable. One particular couple, basically they had a major issue, a major tragedy happen in the relationship, and so they're together. Now they may have repaired things. I'm not saying these things are not unrepairable. I'm not saying these things are not fixable. Why do you think I'm saying counseling? And the tragedy did drive at least the person I know to counseling. I don't know if the other party went to counseling. I don't know if they have family counseling. Sometimes tragedies can help. Sometimes, open their eyes. Sometimes it can help you open your eyes. But I'll be honest with you, statistically speaking, if you've ever seen the movie Collateral Beauty, statistically speaking, most marriages don't survive tragedy. I think it was like 70% is what they quoted in that movie. Don't survive tragedy. Again, I throw up my hands. Why? Because the relationship wasn't strong in the first place. That's the truth. And if you watch the movie with Will Smith, Collateral Beauty, what do we know? He was about quality of life. She was about quality of relationship. So when the daughter died in the movie, I'm not talking about a real couple right now. When the daughter died in the movie, the quality of life that he was providing fell off. She ended up going into, I think, the nursing field and then became a counselor. Now, of course, happy ending, they got back together. But the reality of it is they were a statistical reality. They represented the statistical truth that even tragedy does not save relationships. You know what saves relationships? Relating. You know what saves relationships? Genuine, open, honest, thoughtful communication. That's what saves relationships. You want to have a long marriage? Hey, I'm for all of that. My parents, again, been married going on 51 years. But if you want to have a long marriage and a one that you can turn to, well, that's truly your friend. Let me say this to the singles, and then I'm going to end. Don't enter into that marriage on the basis of, I just got to get married. How do you think it goes sour so quickly? Because you get into the marriage on the basis of, I just want to be married. And you know you don't know this person. You know you don't. You got just enough attraction, physical attraction, let's just be honest. And then you kind of talk nice to each other. And if you do that long enough, you can get married. That's pretty much enough. That's all you need. I know another person on here who is well advanced in years. One of the oldest people on my page. Got married a couple of years ago. And I think within 6 months was parted. If she so happens to watch this, she knows what I'm talking about. And I know she didn't marry that man based on my conversations with her with the intent not to be married. You don't get married at her age to not be married. You get married to be married. And when she began to tell me that he was basically false, things that he said that he didn't live up to in all respects of the marriage, she had every right to leave him. Again, I'm not trying to use her example to try to tell you to leave. Don't twist my words. You're grown. I don't have no kids on my Facebook page. We're all grown people. What I need you to be, what I'm begging you to be, what you need you to be, what am I saying? What you need you to be is honest. Is open, honest, mature. And if the person doesn't want to come to the table, if they don't want to have the conversation, isn't that pretty much all you need? What more do you need? They don't want to fix the situation because it's working well for them. Because they can use you. They can blame you. Why are you still there? Yeah, I said it. Aren't you a pastor, Gabe? Yeah. And I'm going to be posting a video sometime either today or tomorrow. A masterfully done video, by the way, of a gentleman who talked about marriage and divorce. I mentioned it last week. I'm flat out telling you, don't take that. Well, Gabe, you just bitter. If you think I'm talking about this because I'm bitter, you clearly don't know me. And I would encourage you, get to know me before you make another comment. Or I'll just block you. Oh, no, I won't block you. I'll just delete you. Don't put words in my mouth. I encourage people to not only be married, but get rid of this notion that your marriage is your cross to bear. That's not biblical. That's suggesting that when God put Adam and Eve together, the only two people he ever put together, when God put Adam and Eve together, he put them together to suffer. He didn't put them together to suffer. They ate the tree, and it's their fault that they had suffering, not his fault. Don't blame God for the fact that you're staying in a marriage where that man or woman is mistreating you. Don't blame God for that. Don't stop lying to people that this is some kind of spiritual cross to bear and you're going to get some extra jewels in your crown because you stayed despite him beating you or her beating you or lying to you or him cheating on you or whatever. Stop lying. That's not Bible. That's not in the Bible. And you're trying to convince us, we who are single, that that's healthy, that that's righteous, that that's godly, that that makes sense. It doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. And if you are a single person listening to this and you are potentially about to get into a relationship and you detect that person may be abusive, may be a cheater, may be a liar and jealous and on and on and on, and withhold intimacy, and they got all kind of issues, baggage, brokenness, they need to be healed, you need to step back. You need to let them go get counseling. You need to encourage them to get counseling. Won't be another date. Don't even call me until you are scheduled and you are going to a counselor. And if you can't go pay for it, then find a local pastor who has some sense and who can help you walk through some of the dark tunnels in your life. Don't you poison somebody else's life with your life. And that's for my single folks. Because if you want to have the long marriage, that's wonderful. You can't go into it broken, busted, disgusted, jacked up every which way. Which is why Tamala Mann, and I don't know why I can't think of her husband. I can see his face in my head. I can see it. But I can't think of his name. I want to say Mr. Brown, but it's not his name. Anyway, the Manns noticed, what, a couple of years ago when they exposed their marriage and how broken it was, and there were some infidelities and some other things that went on. Broken. Now they survived it and they seem to be doing well, but there was a whole lot of work they had to do. David, there you go. There was a whole lot of work they had to do. And we, for whatever reason, they let us in on that. I follow them on Instagram. They let us into that brokenness that they were going through. And if you notice, it was connected to her weight, if I remember correctly. Part of the struggles, of course, some of that stuff came from their childhood. I won't go through all that. Some of you know the testimony. But the reality of it is, much of the brokenness we see, even in those long marriages, come from childhood, maybe a previous marriage. I'm telling you, things have got to get healed. Things have got to get better. By all means, seek to save your marriage. But on that same token, if it's broken and both parties are not willing to come to the table to fix it, I suggest get out. That's what I suggest. Take it or leave it. Get mad if you want to. Don't come at me crazy, because I know how to speak and I will cut you down. I'm just telling you. Oh yeah, I'm going to cut you down, because that means you didn't listen to nothing I've said for over an hour. So don't come at me crazy because of what I said. Don't tell me about the Bible, because I get the sneaky suspicion I probably know it at least as good as you do. Maybe slightly better. So don't come at me talking about, but what about Matthew chapter 19, 1 Corinthians chapter 7? Because I'm going to tell you what about Exodus chapter 21, Exodus chapter 25, which most of us don't even know. Right? So if you're going to come at me with scripture, you better come chapter, book, chapter, verse, context, and you better be able to explain, or we're going to have a problem. I'm telling you now. Because I've watched too many, and I'm going to be honest, women be hurt behind the dogmatic assertion that a woman doesn't have a right to have a relationship she can enjoy. And that men hold that over hold them over a barrel. Well, you want to be married, so take whatever I give you. And fellas, if you haven't noticed, women are leaving these relationships. Now you can try to say, ooh, divorce if you want to, but look, I stand with them. And I stand with you, men, if you've been in those bad situations, and if you've been mistreated, and you got out because you realized, I don't think I have to take this. I stand with anyone who came to realize I don't have to be abused emotionally, mentally, physically. I don't have to take this. I don't have to sit here and watch you cheat on me repeatedly. I don't have to sit here and watch you lie to me. I don't have to sit here and watch you withhold intimacy, yes, which includes sex. I don't have to sit here and endure this stuff just because the church is going to talk about me. Well, that means they're not really the church. I'm done. I hope this helps. Share it out. Help somebody else. Tag some people in it. Yeah, they, let them know. You know, let them know that you're going to tag them. Let them know that you've tagged them, why you've tagged them. You know who's struggling. Hey, send this to them. Share this as a matter of fact, you can hit that share button and you can share this into Messenger. And they can watch it for themselves. Share this out, because I know for a fact there are a lot of people, men and women, who are hurting. They've been in their marriages for 30 and 40 years. They feel trapped. They don't know what to do. And because there's no one bold enough to speak up, I said, maybe I should stop being scared and I need to speak up. So here I am. Have a good night.